Uh, hello. We just want to double check we're live on all platforms here. Slowly but surely, we're kind of getting a hold of a good gist of what this technology is looking like, right, Matt? And you see a little less glitches, and hopefully that's going to continue. So, Matt, glad to see you. Glad to see everyone who's
Hey,
watching us tonight. Hello, guys. How are you doing,
yeah,
Matt?
glad to see you there. Happy Thanksgiving, past Thanksgiving. Hopefully you had a great time there. And yeah, back at it here, ready to close out the year.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, well, guys, we're back to our Growth Clinic Live. That's another episode, and we're going to talk about a couple of exciting things, a couple of kind of like a weird things, a few things that we're learning as we speak, speaking about economy, things like that. So, essentially, yeah, economy. Let's see, I'm looking at our notes here. We're going to talk about that FTX thing that's been going on, right? You guys have been seeing it on the news quite a bit, so we'll learn a couple of lessons from there. We'll talk about what's happening in Europe because that's affecting the whole world, and so there are a couple of good news actually. And we'll touch base on a couple of other things. We'll talk about a little bit about coffee. We'll talk a little bit about question is going to be: are we in a simulation, right? Is this a simulation that we're in right now? This life? So, but anyway, so let's go ahead and get started, guys. So, Matt, what's been special? What's been cool in your life in last week? What's been one thing that you've been thinking about recently quite a bit?
I am just very appreciative for where we live. And I think the lives that we have, our ability that we can travel, how beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee is with the fall leaves. The colors are still out. Took the best fall picture the other day here of downtown Chattanooga.
That's right. It's pretty
And
epic.
to come from Michigan, where we had over 20 inches of snow very early in the season here, uh, love Michigan as well too, but just very thankful for the life that I have here and the friends and family and good times.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, me myself, like just recently, last couple of days, I've been talking to somebody, and it's that thought. We all know it. We all know. We all kind of hear certain things, right? But then at some point, it kind of strikes you. And one guy was like, "Well," he was like, "Anton, make sure your dreams and plans scare the heck out of you." And I'm thinking, you know what? It's been a while I've been in that mode. I've been in kind of this operation mode quite a bit. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of things needs to be get done, right? We're all in this kind of hustle thing. But then how often do we go into this kind of growth mode, that planning mode, so to say? And what are we planning about? Are we planning tomorrow or are we planning the day after tomorrow, right? Are we planning next 5 years? We're planning next 10 years? Are we setting the goals that scare the heck out of us? That's a question.
Yeah.
So to all of us, hopefully this question challenges you enough to, start thinking maybe I should go a little further. Maybe I should plan a little better, so to say.
Yeah, good timing, right? New Year's is coming up here.
That's right.
I'm not big on New Year's resolutions, but I kind of like to start early, right? Like now's the kind of good time to get that going, build some momentum. So hey, you're off and running here in the new year.
Yeah. Definitely. We should probably talk about it next time. How you
Yeah.
shouldn't tie your goals to a specific time frame and all, but just plan ambitiously. Like, and who cares that you don't reach a particular part of your plan? But when you shoot for stars and you get to what is it? When you shoot to for a sun, you get to a cloud or something like that. You're still in a better position and all. So. But anyway, guys, with all the kind of optimism here that I do, and by the way, you'll see that a lot from me, and I know Matt, you're the same way. I'm highly optimistic, despite everything that's kind of happening and economy. Right, we're going to touch base in just 1 second on that. I see lots of business activity going on around. Stuff is being made, services are being provided, people are being hired. Lots of good stuff. Like this rethinking is going on in multiple companies that I'm aware of, and so just really exciting times. Like so, with all the positive stuff that we that was like a quick intro into what we're about to talk about, right? So Matt prepared a couple of notes here on the economy, where we're headed, and so with that goes our first fancy title. Let me just get to it. So. Where is economy headed? So, yeah, we all have been kind of aware that we're in the pretty tough times economy-wise, right? You see
Yeah.
tech companies are kind of going through a harsher of a time compared to the rest. Folks are being let go, right? What's driving that? Like, Matt, what's driving that? What's causing this trend?
There's so many factors, right? And it's kind of funny because you and I were going to live stream last night, and we just kind of got talking for hours about everything that was going on, and we're starting a little bit later tonight here too, right? Because there's still a lot more going on to work through and get through. But just to start off, I'm with you, Anton. Like, I felt like a year or two ago, I was kind of getting worried. It's like, is this country coming apart? Is this just going to be bickering nonstop between all these sides? And it feels like kind of everybody's kind of burnt out from that. And we're kind of, it seems like, rejecting that. And we're like, no, there's too many good things going on in the States here, right? In the world. Yes, there's some terrible things that are going on, but we can do great things together, right? And I love feeling that and seeing that. I just was not that optimistic even 6 months ago, right, that this was going to happen. So I'm excited. I'm excited about biotechnology, right, all the things that are coming down the pipeline, right, to improve our lives there. So a lot to be optimistic for. Yes, there's a slowdown coming in the economy, but there's still a lot of tailwinds behind it, right? We work through some of these things. We work through more energy independence, right? That gets cheaper, more available. Things are just ideally, they should be getting better and better for us, right? If we stay on that path here. So do we want to talk a little bit about what's in the news here today as far as with Jerome Powell and interest rates? Do we want to jump right into that now?
Definitely. Let's do it.
All right, let's get to it there. We got a little bit of segment prepared here for everybody. I'm just going to switch over to it real quick here. If we've got it up there. There we go. All right. So some pretty big news here this afternoon here. So the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, J. Powell, right, as his nickname is called there, right, in the finance world, he spoke at the Brookings Institute for an economic outlook here. Something very interesting, new that he called out there, and I think it's very important for really everybody that's in business to understand here. He explained something that had been driving me pretty bazonkers nuts for quite a while, but it really starts to make sense here. So he went into detail here, and a lot of these bullet points are really directly from, or even quotes from, what he was saying here. But we pulled a chart here from the open jobs that are in the U.S. Economy. Historically, right, we go back 5 years or so. Historically, right, they run about 7 million job openings. Are kind of out there at about any given time. That's kind of normal. That sounds like a lot, but there's a lot of churn in the economy, new jobs, old jobs closing. That's what that baseline was. Well, here you can see from 2021 now to 2022, it spiked up over 3.5 million new job openings, right? So it's like, hey, what's driving that? Was that because, hey, there was all these new jobs? Or was it because maybe people dropped out of the market? And that's what Jerome Powell went in detail on. So very interesting here to explain that, because sometimes you look around, you're like, is nobody working because there's all these job openings, and what's going on here? So he went into detail and explained. He said, hey, over the last year or so, right, 2021 to 2022, we kind of got thrown off a bit here because there was $3.5 million worker shortfall versus what was expected from the Congressional Budget Office. They put out a forecast for this, right? He is saying that, hey, we're looking at the analysis. Out of that spike of 3.5 million job openings, actually there was excess retirement. So people were going into retirement earlier than expected, right? And you can calculate what that is at a high level, right? $2 million people, right, had dropped out kind of early. And there's different reasons for that during COVID, right? Health concerns, there was job losses during COVID. It can be difficult to find a new job. And then, the markets were holding up really well, right? Stocks were up, doing great. Hey, my 401k portfolio looks good. I'm going to retire. I'm going to get out early, right? So he's saying, hey, that was 2 out of the 3.5 million job openings. Additionally, there was a plunge in immigration, right? All the countries were on lockdown. Immigration was slowed up, shut off. And there was a surge in deaths as well, too, right? So COVID, we know, about 1 million people or so, very unfortunately there. But average life expectancy actually came down in addition to COVID as well, too, which is topic for another time here, right? So
Hmm.
really what you're seeing is there was suddenly this surge of demand, right, for these jobs out there where these businesses wanted these individuals to work, but there just wasn't the supply. And that's where the economy kind of got out of whack from a job supply standpoint there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So, unemployment, it's been running about 3.7%. That's great, right? That's a very low number. But job gains during the first 7 months of the year, up 450,000. Like that's strong growth. And normally that's a great sign for the economy, right? And now it's slowed up a little bit. The Fed was actually warning that about 290,000 the last 3 months, right? But the thing is, there's only about 100,000 kind of additional people, right? As the population grows, that comes on kind of online each month, right? That kind of keeps things at parity, but we're well past that as far as what's being added to the economy. So that puts on additional pressure, right? For companies, how else do they get people except for to pay more money, right? And that's what keeps driving up wages, salaries, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Putting it up there, right? So looking ahead in the next year, the forecasts are out there, 4.6%. So if you're a business owner running a business, that's kind of the expectations out there, right? Because we know inflation's been running about, 8%, averaging over 6% for the year. So it's one of those things that we know is coming and it's going to, continue here. All right. So hang with me here because it's starting to come together. I promise this is something that it's like you want to be able to talk about that, right? Within your business to be able to explain it. Yeah, we feel it's important here. So GDP, right? Last year it had been rocking and rolling, right? 5.7%. GDP in the U.S. averages typically about 2%. Over the last umpteen years, you kind of go slightly above, slightly below 2%. This year we're flattish on that, right? But again, there's been a lot of challenges. There's been bottlenecks in the economy, right? Getting these goods and services from all over the world. It's been challenging, right? We've heard about those supply disruptions out there. He's saying also as well too here, housing and prices increases continue on well into next year before they expect to ease, right? Because people have signed all of these new leases, rentals, right, for their units. Typically you sign at least for a year, right? That's a big part of this equation, right? Is factored in on that, right? So that's expected to stay up. And he's saying, hey, guys, we still have a long ways to go in restoring price stability. Yeah. So some other quick statements from here I found out were important. Ongoing rate increases will be appropriate. Is going to moderate the pace of our rate increases as we approach the level of restraint that will be sufficient to bring inflation down. So that's what the markets were excited about today. Market was up over 700 points here. Hey, they're not going to keep raising rates at, 0.75%, right, each time. Looks like may slow down as early as December here, right? They're going to kind of watch it from them. The Fed is liking what they're seeing that it comes along. He's saying, and this is what's important, the timing of the moderation is far less significant than the question is how much further will we need to raise rates to control inflation and the length of time it will be necessary to hold policy at restrictive level. So just because you see in the news, Fed pivots, I keep seeing that all the time, Fed pivots. Well, just because they might be easing up doesn't mean rates are still going up, right? And they're very clear here. He's saying it is likely that policy will need to be held at a restrictive level for some time. History cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. So that's the variables that we don't know to this equation is how long are those interest rates going to stay up there? We really can't count on that, right? That they're just going to come back down. So there's a lot in there, a lot to talk about there. But we wanted to bring that up. And Anton, any thoughts there as far as what's going on, as far as the economy and jobs and
definitely
questions on that?
My thoughts is if we're gonna go through the time when interest rates are going to be pretty high, how does that impact businesses, right? The cost of capital is going to be pretty high, right? That's very restrictive when it comes to growth, right? So, and here we are in a growth clinic, right? So we talk about growth here all the time. So there are certain factors that enable growth in your company. And so my question is, like Matt said, are you prepared? Are you ready? Because that's a new reality, right? So they're saying the inflation's pretty high. They will be increasing rates. They're not going to be as aggressive with it, right? Hopefully. So, but cost of capital is higher. So meaning, if you take a loan at a higher rate, it needs to be justifiable. It needs to be like your business model needs to align to that. So your margins need to go higher, right? You need to figure out how to actually make that percentage and what's on the top to create that income for yourself and for your teams. There's a lot going on here. And so now restrictive growth when it comes to economy, that's also pretty dangerous, right? So your suppliers, your clients, they've been ordering something, but then right now they're like, hey, this is an extra program for us, right? This is something that we kind of thought of, just in case we need it, but we don't need it. So we'll call you next year. Now, and that's your revenue. And so that's essentially how economy works, right? So I really hope that when there's a lot of kind of smart things that he talked, and you've quoted some of them, but he said timing is not important, but I tend to just entirely disagree with that, because timing is everything when it comes to monitoring the situation. So last year with such a high growth is when you need to increase rates, slightly, right? So historically, they've been decreasing rates like 0.25%, right? And then another 0.25. And so that's a much more palatable and much more pleasant of a rate increase. It kind of prepares you, right? So instead of saying, oh, shoot, my loans just went up, like what we used to be able to get it at like 4 or 5%, right? Now it's like 10, 12. Now, that's if your credit score is good, right? If you're an entrepreneur, or if that's your bank relationship is there. Now, if it's jacked up all of a sudden and overnight, it gets to be twice the cost. Your interest goes twice up. Now, I don't know. I don't think that's a good business. I don't think it's a good governance of what's going on in the economy. So, but we just, so from on their end, there's a lot going on. It does feel like, okay, I'll be honest, it does feel like what's going on right now with all these interest rates, it has less to do with Americans. It has more to do with the world. If you've noticed, the stances, like U.S. stances so far has been very kind of, let's call it that, like pretty aggressive, pretty active, right? When it comes to international affairs. And I just feel like if you know a little bit about how the interest rates work and all, it's a game. It's a war. It's just a war that, and China suffers because of that. Like the lower interest rates for years, right? That were out there, it does make this economy more attractive versus Chinese economy. And so, it does feel like we're in the war. And this is we're just kind of,
it's business. It's a battle, right? You've got your own business to worry about, right? And then you've got your state and the economy, what's going on. You've got the country, the world, right? But what's clear from Jerome is he's saying that it's like, hey guys, we're tightening the spigot on this. It's slowing down. Whether it takes an extra month or two to kind of keep tightening it up, the important thing is we're getting it up to a certain level. It's going to be restrictive. It's basically going to be painful, right? Is what he's saying there. It's going to drop the GDP. So pretty much across the board, there's pretty clear indications here, right? The GDP, the first half of next year, not so great, right? He's being very clear. We are slowing things down because they overheated, right? They kind of got fooled because they thought, hey, there's some temporary disruptions here. Products weren't making it over during COVID. Yeah, everybody's scrambling for it, so the prices go up temporarily. But whoops, nope, they didn't, right? And now we've got to slow it down, right? And I think that feeling that you said, Anton, it's like, is that good governance or not? I think a lot of people are going to be very unhappy. They're going to say, hey, Joe Biden, why are you doing this to the economy? Hey, Joe Biden doesn't control that, right? The Federal Reserve is independent. They're trying to do the overall healthy thing for the economy in the long term. And that may be unpleasant, right? We were having a party.
Dollar. So far, it's been their priority has been, let's do what's healthy for the reserve currency of the world, not necessarily economy, because they're hurting economy, right? So that's a very interesting thing. So it is one of those things that you just kind of keep on the radar, right? You want to be aware of what's going on, because you got to adjust to this new reality and all. So do we fully understand what and why exactly it's happening? No. But do we understand the implications of it? Yes. Because that's going to be hard to miss. The paycheck needs to go out every month, right, to your employees. And so if you can't make it, it's pretty apparent. Let's just put it this way.
So if you have debt out there for your business, right, which most successful businesses, right, they have debt out there. That's very typical, right? They use some, it may fluctuate. Maybe inventory goes up for a big order. You've got a line of credit with the bank, right? So you just borrow that and you use it productively to go through. But you're really going to have to look at that now, right? As far as, are my prices at the right price point? Am I going to be able to afford all that debt? Do I maybe need to go get some equity, right? Do I need to get cash from an investor and say, you know what, we can't afford the 10%, but if you want to invest in this business, right? Okay, that'll take care of inventory. That'll keep us going here. So there's so many variables around this, and that's why it's a topic we're going to continue to talk about. What are different financing options? Always for small businesses, right? That's a big deal. How do I finance my business, right? And there's never an easy answer for that, but there's definitely options out there, right? To do that, to get the funding, if your business is, an attractive business there to fund.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're talking about then, Anton, I think this leads into our next segment that we're going to talk about very, very briefly here. We went a little bit heavy there, but this is about going into next year with the GDP and, hey, how do you know when the market is going to turn out there, right? So it feels like things have overheated. We've pulled back, kind of a downturn, but the GDP, right, is kind of sluggish, flattish. This quarter, it's actually expected to be up modestly, right? There's just some revisions on that. Okay. But going into next year, as we lap next year, right, it's expected to be down, right? Well, there's actually some metrics out there, right, that you can look at to review that. And it's called the Conference Board LEI, right? And it's the leading economic index out there. It's one you probably haven't heard of before. It's a bit of an old school tool that it doesn't often make headlines, right? But it's actually been a very accurate predicting tool about the economy and the direction that it's headed, GDP specifically, where that's headed. So instead of just one input out there, this is made up of a balanced 10 different inputs. It's got building permits, average weekly hours, average credit scores, unemployment claims, the S&P stock prices, right? So if you're pulling building permits for your business to build something, well, that's not actually going to be built probably for a month or two or later afterwards, right? So that's a signal in the future on what's coming. And that's where it's like, if you can get that edge, that 2, 3, 4 week edge on what's going on, it's great to have metrics like that out there and what you can use. So we just want to put those things out there. We're not going to go in great detail on those, but we just want you to be aware that very, very simple to find, right? Just do a Google search there, Conference Board LEI. They do a great job of summarizing what does all this mean, right? Right away, boom, on the landing page. Hey, here's what we're expecting that's going to be happening, and the duration kind of that as well too. So just something to check out there.
Yeah. So again, it's LEI index. Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good. Well, let's shift gears here, guys, and let's talk a little bit about. So we said that again, this economy downturn is not so good news, right? But at the same time, being optimistic, we always know that downturns create lots and lots of, positive wind for any sort of like innovation, things like that, right? Our local incubators here are full. during downturns. Like I remember in '08, I mean, it was packed. Versus prior years, it was just kind of, not fully there. And then once the economy goes down, we're all kind of becoming a bit more entrepreneurs, right? So that's where it's coming from. So let's talk about the positive things of like what's happening out there. And since we know there's a lot going on in Europe, right? So let's shift gears towards the European kind of continent. And we know a lot of this downturn is triggered by what's happening in the world and what's happening in Ukraine, the Russian war, and it does affect lots and lots of areas, including Europe. Europe is one of the largest macroeconomic regions out there, right? And that's a customer, that's a supplier to many other countries, many other companies out there. And so when they struggle to get certain pieces made, certain pieces produced, it does become a problem for all of us. And so the good news at Europe, so we know again a lot about the war, and we're not going to go that route. You'll probably hear it in the news and things like that, which by the way is kind of headed in the right direction overall. So as long as we keep supporting Ukraine and what's happening out there, and once they get the lights, they can probably watch this episode. But lights and heat is going to become pretty sporadic this winter. Yeah. So let's just kind of keep Ukrainians in our prayers. But overall, so Europe has been struggling with the gas supply, right? And we've discussed that multiple times before. Europe has been ordering gas. Like Germany went from nuclear, essentially, right? 17 nuclear power plants have been opened in 2001. Only 3 of them are open right now. That is crazy, right? So all that nuclear, which is cheap, pretty environmentally friendly. Once those power plants are contained, right? It's pretty environmentally friendly energy. It's inexpensive, right? All that cheap energy was substituted with Russian gas, and questions arise why and how and all. But that's aside. How do we? So now that Europe, Germany specifically depends a lot on gas, right? How do we supply? Now that Russian gas supply is not there, how do we supply gas to Europe? And so. Some countries out there, Qatar is one of them, strikes an LNG deal with Germany. So Germany is the highest demand in Europe. I think you need to combine another next 5 or 6 countries to come up with that much of a demand for gas at this point. So Qatar strikes the LNG deal with Germany. They're going to be supplying them. LNG is becoming kind of like a thing, right? So if we can't ship it through a pipeline, let's pack it on a ship. Make it liquid and ship it that way. So first direct shipment from Australia, Australian gas arrives in Europe. So that's already in place. So Australians must be pretty happy because there's that chunk of economy that's going to go up, and that's some money for all kinds of things that they can do within their economies.
Credit to the economies there too, for like Germany, right, for being very quickly at starting to work through that process of converting over, right? 100%. Because all of these places run off of you're expecting oil, right? But to be able to go back into liquid form, right, of the natural gas, right? Like normally it just runs off a regular gas, right? The gas gets piped in, it's in a vapor type form there, right? But converting things over so that their equipment can run off the liquid, right? Them can be converted, right? And then run the equipment. Because, as we've seen, gas prices have come back down across the world. European reserves, right, have largely been filled up, right, to go throughout the winter. Winter has come, right, to Europe. It's dropping down even more, right? It was a little bit later, fortunately, right, for coming in here. But I admit, I feel like I was wrong there as far as I didn't think we were going to be able to, the world, right, was going to be able to pull this off to be able to fuel Europe, right, to keep heating going. Yes, it's expensive, particularly over there, but at least there's some of the supplies there, right, from an overall European economy. And then, of course, Ukraine, right, like we talked about, unfortunately, separate situation there. But pretty impressive that we kind of keep dodging some of these major bullets, right, as it relates to Ukraine and Russia. And hopefully we keep doing that, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, but again, you see how when you're an optimist, you do find support for your. Maybe it's the bias, right? That I'm just positive. Like I find all the positive things that are happening out there, and within this war, there's plenty of opportunities again arising for other countries, and let's talk about that here in a second. So Kazakhstan tells EU that they can supply all the 30 crucial materials that EU needs. So Russia being the biggest chunk of land right out there, I think it's close to like, what is it? The Soviet Union was 1/6 of all the land, right? Now that the Soviet Union is gone, it's slightly less of a territory, but it's probably close to 1/6 of land belongs to this one country. Well, it's probably, a lot less. Probably one, what is it? Yeah, 1/8 or something.
Less now, but it's massive,
it's
right?
Massive.
Like,
So Russia has been supplying all the crucial materials. Some materials, I mean, some are like, okay, you guys ready for those names? It's beryllium, tantalum, niobium. Like, what in the world do you use these for? But let's remember that we use a lot of chemistry around us, right? Things are made out of certain things. Our phones are made out of certain things. And hydrogen, liquid hydrogen has been a thing that's been needed out there in EU. And so other countries are kind of jumping in on this bandwagon, and they're saying, hey, we can supply it. We can't supply it as much as Russia, but we'll give you, say, 20% of your supply and figure out the rest 80 on your own. And so Kazakhstan is a winner kind of in this game because they can be at the table and having that discussion with EU. And Kazakhstan is also co-financing research between Kazakhstan and EU. So essentially, they're saying, hey, now that Russia is out, we're ready to work with you guys. Let's co-finance certain innovations out here, right? Lithuania is another country that makes the benefits out of what's happening out there, or figured out how to turn it to a positive, an advantage for them. And we all know that Belarus and Russia is kind of like a brother and sister, so to say. And what's happening in Russia is very much mimicked in what's happening in Belarus. And so IT companies, there's been a big crackdown on them, right? And so because that's a private sector, that's a liberal kind of environment, right? And so with all the kind of the tightening that's happening out there, you can't say this, you can't do this. IT companies are forced to leave, right? And in fact, some IT companies were involved with some sort of almost like a hacking of a government because they don't like the current guy because he's not, actual person who was elected to be a president. He's just stayed to be a president. But anyway, so the IT companies are leaving Belarus. Lithuania is right across the border, and a lot of IT companies settled there. And Lithuania makes a push to become Europe's fintech hub. And so that's another. See, out of everything that is going on, that will be going on, you can always find an opportunity. When COVID started, right? You guys remember that that was a big opportunity for some companies, and all the Zooms and Pelotons and Netflixes of this world, I mean, they said, we need more people. Let's hire more people, because there was just, the demand was crazy. And so hopefully in this downturn, in everything that's happening in the world right now, and the world is going crazy. Can I just say that? The world is just literally, when I wake up in the morning, you look through the news, like how, when? Can we just stop? Can we just go back to how, anyway, so the world is going crazy, and that's truly so. But hopefully you find an opportunity. Hopefully you are seeking those opportunities. You're kind of shifting gears in your mind, saying, okay, how does this position me at an advantage, right? How can I become a supplier to this missing opportunity? Can I bring people together? Can I create a platform where people find each other and things like that? So yeah. Anyway, some good news in Europe, and they'll figure this out. And I think speaking about the whole war, to just kind of wrap up this subject, is they need to live through this winter, and then things are going to get better from there. So cold season is once that's passed, I think we're going to hear more news, and maybe that 1/6, 1/7 chunk of the land will no longer be that the 1/7 chunk of land. So maybe that's just saying, being Ukrainian can help it. Anyway, shifting gears here, let's go to our next piece, right? We we talked a lot about it, right? Already. I know you guys have been discussing it with your friends and family and things like that, coworkers. This FTX saga. All right, guys. So here's what's happening with FTX. My main point that I wanted to share with you guys, and Matt, let me know your thoughts on this as well. But
sure,
this thing is huge. How huge? Well, the liability so far, the overall liability out of this whole so company ends up owing, or the ecosystem that Sam created. Let's call him SBF, right? He goes by SBF. So the overall liability is around 52 billion. Well, how much is it really? Well, Enron's overall liability was 23 billion. Now that was back then. So if you bring it to a current value of money, that would be 35 billion today's money. 35 for Enron, 52 for FTX. That's crazy. So what's the exposure? The company was moving about $10 billion per day in funds, right? That's an exchange. That's where you would go. FTX is where you would go and buy cryptocurrency. You would deposit real dollars and get crypto money as an exchange. So as a result, the company accumulated a ton of cash, dollar currency, and so they've funded a bunch of projects, products, companies. UC Berkeley Stadium was called FTX Arena or something like that, right? Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry was kind of showing us his phone with FTX installed, and thanks, Steph Curry, appreciate it. So we discovered these 130 companies involved, connected to this whole thing, right? So essentially what's happened is there's this FTX business which says, hey guys, put your dollars in our accounts and buy cryptocurrency with it, right? Now, with that cash, the Alameda Research, is that the name of the company?
Yep, Alameda Research. Yep.
So this SBF guy takes this cash that people deposited in the FTX. He says, why should we be that liquid, right? Let's just keep 10% of people's money in our accounts. Let's invest the rest. He takes people's money, right, and invests them in roughly about 130 entities all over the world. As a result, there's this image of a healthy, vibrantly, and very strongly growing company out there, right? Everything that he touches kind of turns into gold because there's a ton of cash, and it's not his cash; it's my cash or your cash, right, as a user. But anyway, he uses that money to fund a bunch of projects. He convinces SoftBank and BlackRock to invest, which is crazy. And by the way, just to give you a scope of like how crazy this SBF guy is, he was on the so he was worth about 26 billion prior to this, but he was playing a League of Legends, it's a game, while he was on the call asking for 210 million. So imagine yourself being on the very important call, and on the conference call, where you are asking for another company to invest $210 million. And during that call, you're playing a computer game. Anyway.
I think that was with Sequoia Capital, right?
Yeah,
which is
so.
Kind of like the behemoth in the category, right? For some of these investments. Not definitely a company you would not want to disrespect like that. I think they've written down, I think they said about $275 million, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, it's hitting crypto obviously extremely hard, right? It feels like.
Well, let me tell you something. Yeah. They will not see that money back. So.
That's the question, though, right? It's kind of like Robinhood, right? Like the app, like a lot of people use that, right, for buying stocks. Like you assume you buy that stock, it's being held by the company there, right? You look at your app, you're like, there it is, but it's like, it's just kind of there digitally, right?
You assume it's like a bank, right? It's regulated, and you assume that your rights are protected and your money is safe. But guess what? Like zero government regulation about this kind of thing. It being based out of Bahamas, I guess, makes it an advantage for them to just not be quite a bit deregulated out there. But yeah, and what kind of lessons I guess we're drawing out of this, right, Matt? So the first one, I mean, I can't help but to think, and you know, guys, I talk a lot about it, but like creating something that's of a value, right? Taking somebody's money, putting it in a business and making it look like it grows and it functions and operates well. It's just not a way to go, right? Create something where people vote with their hard-earned money. You don't need to be this multi-billion-dollar corporation and put your name on the building and things like that. Now, if you're at that level, great, and keep pushing, because that's the way to go. But like, create something that's valuable, right? Create something that's good. And when people work, at their $20 per hour kind of jobs, and I mean, $100 for them is a half a day of work, and yet they purchased your product. Now that is cool. That is significant. That person trusts you, and you must be having some sort of a good product or service. So keep doing that. So create something that's of a value, right? Matt, what's your thoughts? Like, what kind of lessons are you getting out of this whole FTX drama?
I mean, there's so many lessons, right? Just from the entire crypto, where it's like, how does a guy suddenly become worth 20 whatever billion dollars, right? And especially like you said, what does he actually create? But that was kind of the mystery. And they're always in business and investing, like, we try and just kind of like squint our eyes, just like, does this work or not? Like, you want to believe in it, and it too much, right? It's like kids, when you tell them a story, right? Making up a story, like, they want to believe in it, right? And people with their money, they want to believe in it. To me, this looks like something like Bernie Madoff, right? We're basically kind of a Ponzi scheme. He took the client's money, used it for other investments. He thought he'd come out ahead, probably thought he would pay it back. Somehow he had justified it in his mind to do it. And no, right? And kind of got called out on it here, and the whole thing started to collapse. So, kind of interesting video there. Elon Musk, he'd kind of called this out as far as like, hey, unless they actually give you the digital keys kind of for this, like, how do you know they're actually going to secure this or not, right? So biggest takeaway, and I know we're going to be talking more about this, is around governance and having the proper governance around that, right? There was investors that was emailing the group there after the presentation, right? They were going to invest. They said, hey, to invest, next steps, we're going to need to see some more things on governance and, a few typical steps, right? The response was a vulgar response back, right? And it's just like, should have been warning signs out everywhere, right? Kind of in the industry. Anytime anybody tells you, hey, I got an investment, it's going to make you 15% a year, like, just red flags right away on that, right? There's no free lunches like that out there in the economy. Ever, right? Otherwise, the money would just naturally flow there, right? And drive that return
so
back down.
Having a process, right? Having a system, having certain like set of protocols that kind of guides you through, certain situations. And I know, like, establishing protocols, establishing policies within your companies, it's boring, right? Who wants to follow protocols? Who wants to be, well, is this according to our policy or not? But that's what keeps you, those are the checks and balances that are out there, right? Yeah. Matt, you talk a lot about boards, right? So why board would be an important piece here in this equation?
Yeah, well, I think, the boards are about kind of three things. Patrick Dunn does a great job of boiling that down. His book, Boards, excellent book, very detailed, but also one you can just kind of flip through, look at some of the pictures, diagrams in there, right? And really get a good concept of why that board is so important, right? But a board is about, it's about people, process, procedures, right? I think clearly the right people weren't in place, right, on the board and on the executive team there. The procedures was definitely out of whack there, right? There wasn't the governance in place, right? There wasn't the auditing around that, right? So there was just so many kind of red flags there. A good board, in fact, a terrible board, would still be able to identify those things, right? If you were to get them. And, we're going to continue to push that. I know that's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people, as far as like, a board just seems like a lot of hassle and an extra step, an extra authority out there to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm an honest guy. I'm going to do the right thing all the time. And it's not about that. Like, that's great to have, like, that will make the investors feel better, but you want a board around you that's going to be bringing more opportunities to you, right? Can examine things from a high level and say, yeah, you're doing great here, but are you 2 steps ahead here? Because that board member has done, been there, done that before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they're able to work through financing. They're able to work through auditing your financials, right? Getting you set up with the right accountant, the right software for your company. There's so many benefits to having a
Mm-hmm.
board of advisors or board of directors, and we'll talk about the difference on that, another time here. But for those getting into it, excellent quick book here is Startup Boards. Brad Feld kind of took the lead on the book here. He's been investing in startups since the 90s. I've read a lot of different board books here. This is just an excellent one to get going with. It doesn't go super deep into any one point, but it's just a very good, light, easy read. And I think everyone that reads that will have a much better understanding coming out of it. Why they should have a board, the benefits of it. It's something that's not talked about a lot. It's kind of mysterious a lot of times, boards. There's not like, you don't go to university to like just go to board school, right? You don't get your master's degree and then you go to get your board degree. Now, there's different programs that you can take on that, but it's going to be one I know that's going to be talked about more, as some of these things that have fallen apart should have never happened in the first place, and the red flags that were out there. So, and a great board can do so many good things within your company. The boards will set up various committees, right, within the board to talk about governance, nomination, audit, compensation, right? Because that's something that CEO, it's kind of challenging just to set that yourself. Let some others come in that have been there, done that, and get you going in the right direction. Help you with that burden, right? It's lonely at the top when you're running a company, and to get these others involved and to get involved early, so beneficial. If you don't know where to start too, there's so many nonprofit boards as well too, and they go through the same struggles as a for-profit company often has, sometimes more so, because they're trying to raise money, right? They're just basically breaking even, right? Nonprofit by definition, right? That's just kind of what they're doing there. So great connections that you make there as well too, right, within your community. It's been wonderful for me, just those relationships, those friendships that were made on there. And so many benefits to that. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that more in the future. And it'd be great to get some of these individuals like Patrick Dunn on there. I think they'd like to catch up and talk with us about that some more.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And so with the we should definitely devote some time later in the future talking about this, because again, this is one of those kind of boring subjects, right? And when is it that you need to establish a board, right? Am I ready for the board, or am I too small, or I'm just starting? Like, what's the board? Could another one person be your board, or do I just need to counsel with, like, surround yourself? Essentially, the way I think about it is surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, right? Be it in a formal shape and form board. If it's not the board, if you're not big enough, so to say, right, for the board, if you don't set up with that kind of structure, still, like, wisdom is amongst those who counsel, right? Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Talking about this FTX saga, right? We do understand there's a lot of kind of fraud going on, right? There was a lot of risk taken. So let's think of that. How much of a risk becomes fraud, right? And I just want to connect this piece of news with Elizabeth Holmes getting 11-year jail sentence for something that's not too far from this whole FTX thing. She was out there. All the prominent people were advocating for this blood testing device, right? And at some point, there's too much risk. There must be some sort of like a moral compromise that you are going through, right? You're saying, well, I've already taken all this risk. I already told them it's going to be ready. I already told them it's successful. And this Alameda research, I'm sure it kind of went through the same things. Like, well, I already told people I'm going to be investing. And where do I get the money? Well, I've got the source here. Let me just kind of moral compromise a little. So again, Elizabeth Holmes is going to jail. SBF is probably going to jail, right? But the question is, does that prevent us from taking risks, right? Is it okay to take risk, and how much risk is good? And so hopefully we as a community, right, we learn out of these lessons. Hopefully we understand, okay, this part was great, but hold it. They should have come up with a product, right, that works. But so lessons learned, FTX Saga, Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. Just kind of keep tabs on those things, and I think again learning and understanding your market, your consumer. I mean, it's like board advice that Matt was giving. It's boring, right? I mean, come on, like just create a good product. But guys, this is exactly what propels large companies to be large, to be sustainable, to be around longer. And so, since Matt shared his favorite book, here's one of mine. It's not necessarily a favorite book, but it's one of those. Can you guys see it? Yeah. So it's called Value Proposition Design, and so this book will kind of walk you through step by step of understanding your customer, creating a product that fits those pains and gains and jobs, and ultimately creating something that's of value to another human being out there. So,
yeah.
Well, shifting gears here, let's go to our well, actually, before we go into our final kind of piece here, which is kind of fun. So I chose the subject specifically because let's just kind of stretch our brains every once in a while. This one will definitely will. If not, let me know. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about that coffee, right, Matt? You shared a little bit about the company that kind of gave you a couple of samples, actual coffee, right? So question becomes, do you guys want us to be reviewing certain products, certain pieces, certain things, right? And we would love to approach this. If we would love to approach this from a perspective of an entrepreneur, right? A professional. Like we all drink coffee every once in a while. Someone's on daily, someone's on every once in a while. What is a good coffee, right? Let's go test them. Let's go figure it out. What's the quickest, fastest, yet best way to make it? Or what's a good camera? What's a good laptop? What's good out there, right? So the question is, do you want us to be doing this, to be reviewing certain products? We would love to do this. I would love to do this because I think it's fun. And so, Matt, I don't know if you want to show the video or not, but you have a chance to.
No, I think it's just good to objectively be able to break down, right, your product or service and not get tied up in the emotions of it, right? And to be able to see that in other products, identify the things, hey, this is working, this is not, and being around a group of people that will tell you the same thing, right? And everybody hopes and crosses their fingers, oh, this product's going to be amazing. It's the best thing ever the way it is. Well, 99% of the time, it's just not, right? And a lot of times there's compromises as well, too. Yeah, like, so maybe you design this great thing, but it's like, yeah, it's going to cost $100 and you're going to be able to sell it for $105. And like, that's not going to work, right? Like in the overall scheme of things. So I think being able to break down products, love to do more reviews like that and get inputs too. Cause there's going to be a lot of things that you and I miss on this as well too. And we just might be flat out wrong, right? We might say like, hey, this is going to be a challenge to do this, but you've got an ace up your sleeve. You know how to do that. You're going to be able to pull that off and surprise us all. That's fine. But you should be able to take the criticism about your products or your service and be glad about it, right? You don't want to just ask your family about that, right? They're just going to pat you on the back, good job, looks great. And boom, off you go to market and you fall on your face there, right? Don't waste my time doing that, right? Tell me exactly what's going on with the issue here. So here's one product in particular, right? It's a company here that, we talked about coffee. Coffee isn't anything new, right? Like it's been around forever. Like I said, a lot of us drinking all the time. That's just pretty standard in the entrepreneur community, right? To be doing that, right? But it's interesting. It's like, do we have to always consume it necessarily in the same way? Or is there some easier ways to do that? So this company is called Cometeer, Cometeer, 2 E's. And they do an online delivery of different roasters' frozen coffee. And the secret there is this is an instant coffee. This is coffee that is brewed at 10 times the strength, right, of normal coffee that as when you would do it at home. So it's pure coffee. There is nothing else in it. There's no additives. There are preservatives. It's simply frozen in a concentrated form, sent to you. You just take it out of the freezer, you keep it in the fridge, whatever's fine. Put it in your cup, heat up your water, boom, off you go, right? So I'm going to play a quick video of that here. And So here's the packaging, right? Comes frozen. There's 4 packages in there, different varieties. I kind of like that, right? La Soledad is the one I had tried. I haven't tried all the flavors yet. You just kind of melt it a few seconds underneath the warm water there. You leave it in your fridge, cold, hot, however you make it, right? All you do is pour it in there. Maybe it doesn't look the most attractive pulling it in there, but okay. It isn't a K cup. It's kind of confusing too, because I'm like, do I just put this in my regular, as a regular K cup? No, you just stir it up. If you got your frother, I like my frother. And of course,
spin it,
you
baby.
use a frother. Of course, you always overspill it. So I thought I tasted it. I tried it. I thought it was great. Like, I appreciate good coffee, probably spend on the higher end, I don't know, $20 a pound or whatever, right? Good, decent, coffee, a local roaster, trying those out. I thought what was cool about this was, well, let me hear from you first, Anton. What do you think about it there?
So I've tried a couple of them. Yeah, it's definitely a different way to make coffee, which kind of makes sense. It's essentially a frozen espresso, right? You put it in the milk, in the water, depending on how you want it to be made. And it tastes pretty good. I'm not a big expert in coffee, I'll be honest. But certain cups tasted kind of better to my palate. Certain were like stronger, certain are not.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends. If you know exactly which one's which, you kind of go like, well, I need a small kick today, or I need like a more of a smooth kind of flavor. So I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
No, I'm with you, Matt. So I think let's keep doing this going forward. We can do like a separate segments on. Let's just review stuff, and it could be, again, just like you said. Hey, it could be products of what's good out there. What's a good mouse to work with, right? To use.
Yeah.
What's a good camera? What's a good lens? But also let us know about your products, right? If you're making a product, we would love to also review it, and we'll be brutally honest if it's good or not, and we'll try to figure out areas of improvement, and we'll just go from there. So
yeah, no, I mean, there's some things I really liked about it, right? I think the taste was up there, right? And if there's not these additives in there, great. I was a little bit confused by the K cup. At first, I thought it was going to come in, let's say, kind of like a larger pill, right? Maybe it's just inside of, just thinner plastic, right? That you open up, it's frozen, boom, you drop it in. That was quite a bit of materials, right? To get, it's 32 cups of coffee, but that's quite a bit of materials. Now, they did an excellent job as far as like it's all recyclable. I think they took it to the nth degree, right, to make that happen there. But, I think some people have concerns around, plastics, even if it's in there.
or
it
aluminum
just seemed
foil.
it seemed like a little bit extra.
Yeah.
But, from a branding standpoint, I do like that, coffee, you go in a coffee shop, it kind of just like, hey, I'll take whatever coffee. But the specific roast, these are, 4 different roasters that I get to try, different flavors, very particular, right? Hey, this is dark roast. This is single origin, Guatemalan. It's got flavors of almond and cherries and so forth to it, right? Like, I feel like that experience could go deeper if it's in a format like that it's very clearly on package. Here's all these great things about this coffee, and now I'm going to try it, and the next day I'm going to try a different one, and I'm going to get to experience that. Yeah, from a supply chain standpoint, going out frozen, okay, if it's going to consumers direct, okay, can you sell it in a store, retail? Not so sure, but could the coffee be right in the refrigerated section, maybe in a form like that? I think it might be. It gets challenging when you ship frozen, refrigerated, spoilage, all that sort of things. But yeah, we'll break it down. That's where I'd love to hear more feedback as far as what did we miss? Did you like it? Are you excited about it? Again, the company's name is Cometeer, COMETEER.com. Just go out there, check it out. I'm sure they'd love to have feedback there. I've shared it with quite a few people, and I'm going to summarize all that feedback, share it back. So appreciate them sending that out.
Yep. Sounds good. Alrighty, guys. Well, let's go to our last piece here for today. And here's a question for you. Are we in a simulation? Is this world a simulation, right? We know a couple of movies out there, including Matrix, including, what's the other one? Hold on, I'm blanking on it. where they're going to sleep into a sleep and then waking up and then trying to figure out if this is if they're awake right now. And so question always kind of becomes is this a real world, right? Is this a simulation? And how seriously should we treat this world if it is a simulation, right? So here's a couple of thoughts. So some of the experts, when it comes to, I'll show you the article here. So they're referencing a couple of folks out there when it comes to this. So here's an article. It's kind of experts in graphics, right? So in the VR, they're basically suggesting that, hey, what if, right? Let's just kind of stretch our brains here. What if we are in a simulation? What would be the supportive empirical evidence? See, they're going through this of reasons why we could think that, kind of almost like a crazy thought. So here's a piece here. Any virtual reality world will be based on information processing, right? So that means that everything is ultimately pixelated down to a minimum size that cannot be subdivided further, bits, right? Well, if you think of science, right? If you think about quantum mechanics and all, we have gotten as humanity to the science level to where we could say, well, here's a pixel. We don't know what's behind it, right? We can't see. We can speculate. Certain particles, right? So let's see. Similarly, elementary particles, which make up the visible matter in the universe, are smaller units of matter. To put it simply, the world is pixelated, right? They're the smallest discrete units of energy, length, and time, right? Atoms. It appears to mimic reality according to the theory of quantum mechanics, which rules the world of atoms, right? So hold on. So if we know that at the most elemental level, everything that surrounds us is energy, right? Because essentially, once you get down to the thing that makes a thing, there is nothing there, right? Here's the pixel. Here's the basic. Here's most basic. I think they call it quarks, right? What atoms are consisting of. And so, and speaking about electrons, nobody knows the position of an electron. Nobody even knows whether they exist empirically or not. We do know that there are particles and there's certain features, for certain properties that they have. Another piece is think about it. What other supporting facts would be out there that we may live in a simulation? Is the laws of physics that govern everything in the universe also resemble the computer code lines, right? That is a simulation, and it would follow the execution of the program. Moreover, the mathematical equation numbers and geometric patterns are present everywhere, right? The world appears to be entirely based on math. And we know this. We know this golden rules, right? We know the nature is full of this. I think it's called golden section, right? Where you see these patterns and spirals and things that are totally unrelatable, right? Something that's like a stone material made in a certain fashion, and you've got something that's organic matter that's very fragile and lives only 2 weeks. There are similar patterns out there. Atoms behave like planets out there, right? So we're talking about micro world and a macro world out there. They're very similar, right? What is going on? This whole world, our reality is based heavily on math, right? Perhaps the most supportive evidence of a simulation hypothesis comes from quantum mechanics. This suggests that the nature isn't real. Particles in determined states, such as specific locations, don't seem to exist unless you actually observe them and measure them. Instead, they are a mix of different states simultaneously, right? And this is where quantum mechanics, if you've read a little bit about the studies that they do and things like that, my brain is not enough to fully understand what is going on. So certain particles can be in two states at the same time. We measure them and you say, well, here's an electron and here's its position, but that is at the time of measurement. What is going on when we don't, right? And so then we go into the this whole duality of light is light particles or is light waves, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's both. Well, and also hold on, if you observe it it becomes
Mm-hmm.
particles. But if you don't, it becomes it remains as waves. And so what is going on? What else is out there that could be compared to that? We don't fully understand what's going on. Then there's another piece, and this I'm going to wrap it up with this because I know my brain is just not able to handle this. But there's this thing that's called quantum entanglement. It allows for two particles. Just think about it, to be connected, so that if you manipulate one of them, you automatically and immediately change the state of the other, right? No matter how far apart they are.
In a different location, yeah.
So you can split an atom, right? And take these quarks that are spinning in a certain direction and put one in New York, one in California, and spin the direction of one of them in New York, while the spin of a sister quark in California would change at the same time. How? Like, what is going on? And so anyway, just I thought it would be kind of fun to.
Well, I think if nothing else, right, beside extremely interesting, like these are the sort of exercises, like when you're with a team and you're trying to get creative, to kind of throw them out there to let everybody get used to, like, man, this is like a big thing that we just don't understand. What's maybe some theories around that on how they work, or how do you think it works, right? Like, and I'm sure everybody would jump in with their 2 cents, right? Some might say, no, I'm a Christian and I don't believe in this. Well, it's like, well, does that, you could still be both. Maybe it doesn't, or, oh yeah, I read, go deeper into it. But it's just, it's one of those things, let's say, like the Easter bunny, right? Like we were talking about earlier with kids, like they just want to believe kind of things. There's a lot of things out there that we just kind of believe and kind of okay and go along with it. And, that's where with entrepreneurs, right? That's what they see. That's what they pick up on is like, that's not being explained right. That's a problem. That's a challenge. Why aren't we looking at this differently, right? That's what good entrepreneurs do, right? They get locked in on something and they see it in a way that nobody else sees that, right? Those are the CEOs, founders that people invest in. They're so passionate about it. They open up your mind like that. They explain it. They're there. They can see around the corner, right? Is what they call it, right? They've got that eyes that somehow they can see.
There's a
around the corner
vision,
on it.
yeah. And going back to this whole board situation, right? I mean, let's connect those subjects, right? So why in the world do we even bring this up? Because a different perspective, right? A different perspective is helpful. Like you were saying, from a creative standpoint, which is extremely important. But also another perspective which you don't agree with, right? I mean, are we in a simulation? I don't know. But there's some evidence out there. There's something going on, and there's people out there. They're pretty smart people, and they're looking into this and say, "Yeah, it seems like what." It's just a different perspective. You don't have to agree with it. Just I think the encouragement that I would give to all of us here is to be a little more open-minded and just look at another person's point of view. This is why the board is so important, right? This is why surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you is important. You don't have to agree with them, right? I always say this to all of the people that I know, the close ones and all. I say we don't have to agree to be friends, right? Like Matt and I, we don't agree, right? All the time. In fact, in some issues, like we have totally opposite kind of points of view, which is wonderful, right? Which is great. And so whether you think we're in a simulation or not, I suggest you don't take this life too seriously. Especially if we are in a simulation, and so just understand that if you go like if you fly out there in space, right, and we are a tiny speck of dust, right, compared to the rest of what's happening out there, and sometimes we think our problems are bigger than this universe, and it's not. Maybe that's another perspective. So just don't take this life too seriously. Be extremely optimistic about everything that's happening around you, because everything around is a lesson and everything around is an opportunity, right? Kazakhstan, Lithuania, those are the countries that figured out that they can capitalize on that, right? Other companies that are kind of going through this downturn in economy, and they're saying, hey, this is an opportunity for us in this way, right? Incubators are full of entrepreneurs that are saying, hey, I can provide the same product, not much innovation in the product section, but the innovation in the process, right? I will deliver this product like coffee. Matt just talked about coffee. Just going to wrap up this whole conversation, right? So you can deliver coffee in a frozen shape and form that tastes good, right? And it's better for you. It's got all the antioxidants compared to instant coffee. Why not ship the same product, just in a different shape and form? That's a new process. That's more convenient. People will love it. So I guess my encouragement is keep thinking about this world as a simulation and try to figure out how to break the code. And maybe us all as a community hacking this code together, writing a different firmware in our minds, right, will get us just a little further. So, but anyway, I thought it was fun to discuss that last piece. I thought it was fun to discuss all the rest of the pieces. I know there's a lot, and so I think every time we do these live streams here, every 2 weeks, by the way, join us for the next one. I just think it's a reminder for each other, like, I'm here and I'm here for you. And so as much as I can, I'll give back. And this is kind of like our little opportunity. And so if this was valuable, let us know. If it wasn't, let us know. We like those perspectives. And so if you want us to review different products and all in the future, let us know. And also about the future subjects, people you want to see. Matt and I have been talking about interviewing folks here on this channel. So you'll see more kind of dynamic happening here. We're trying to figure out the content game here. And if you and your business, by the way, also trying to figure out the content, well, let's do this together. So,
yeah.
Matt, anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
I will just leave you with E equals MC squared. It's just all I got to explain.
Remember that, guys. If you don't remind yourself about this every morning, you may be wasting your life. So anyway, guys, this was fun. This was truly a good time. Hopefully you all had a good time at the gym. If you are at the gym, I always say this, and you've been listening to this, I'm proud of you. We've been live for quite some time here, more than an hour, and good job. Good job lifting those weights, and good job running that on the treadmill. So keep growing, keep pushing yourself, and I think that's a good way to grow and propel yourself forward. So, Matt, thanks a lot. It was good to see you.
Thanks,
guys.
Anton. Great seeing you. Always
To all
great.
of you, good to see you. Stay in touch, and we'll talk to you guys soon.